survivors. At least one police services unit has publicly complied. And that's my subject on today's Fiamengo File. I'm Janice Fiamengo of the University of Ottawa. For years, the police service has been a prime target of feminist activism with the goal of radically transforming how officers respond to sexual assault allegations. And feminist success in shifting the declared emphasis of the police force has been near total. The police force is now a body that openly encourages women to make allegations even in the absence of any evidence, and repeats feminist talking points about how women rarely lie about rape. All of this and more is clearly displayed on the new website of the Toronto Police Unit, which serves Canada's largest city, and I think it would be unreasonable to assume that the Toronto Police Service is any different from any other North American police force. Now, before I start looking at the website, I want to acknowledge Libby Telford, an advocate for the falsely accused and wrongly convicted of sex crimes. Libby was the one who drew this site to my attention and offered a critique of its biases and blind spots, and so I'm relying here on many of her insights while also adding my own perspective. Of course, anything that's inaccurate or oversimplified in my analysis is my own responsibility, and I encourage you to correct me where I'm wrong, since I'm far from an expert on police procedure or the law. The Toronto Police Service website provides an introductory video, which I think everybody should watch, which states that the police service offers a, quote, survivor-centered approach to sexual assault investigation that places priority on the, quote, emotional and physical well-being of those impacted by sexual violence.
The Toronto Police Service recognizes that survivors of sexual assault are reluctant to make initial contact with police and report incidents of sexual violence. Our mission is to investigate every case, ensuring personal and community safety, and to provide those impacted by sexual violence with community resources. We are just one agency in a circle of support. We work together in order to provide the best possible outcomes for those impacted by sexual violence. But many people do not know about the options available to them. With that in mind, Project Guide took shape.
It focuses on providing resources in a survivor-centered approach that places priority on the emotional and physical well-being of those impacted by sexual violence. To make sure we got it right, we spent 2 years engaged with numerous community service providers and advocacy groups.
Now, hear the chilling use of the feminist phrase survivor-centered, which, of course, accepts an unproven claim as if it were reality, and the emphasis on the police unit's responsibility to offer emotional support rather than conduct fact-based investigations. These show, in my opinion, the clear impact of the advocacy groups the police force says it has consulted. And the result of the years-long consultation is that the website has a great deal to say about the services for and respect due to survivors, and absolutely nothing to say about the services for and respect due to the accused. In fact, one could be forgiven for concluding that the various advocacy groups consulted didn't think of the accused at all, except to equate accused with guilty. The website has a whole section on so-called rape myths, one of which assures readers that women don't often lie about rape, but instead, in fact, quote, deny or minimize sexual assault, and that, quote, the rate of false reporting is very low. There's no actual figure given for what is considered a low rate. There's no source for the statement, and there's no recognition that even if it could be determined that the rate of false reporting is very low, even if that could be conclusively determined, the consequence of a false report, as it is called, the consequence is serious enough that belief should never be a given. There should never be, in my opinion, a bias in favor of the so-called survivor. But the website demonstrates an egregious bias over and over again. In the section on reporting to the police, the website also tells us that, quote, although both women and men can be victims of domestic violence, the overwhelming majority of this violence involves men abusing women. And again, we aren't given any source for this statement, and we're not told what the police consider a, quote, overwhelming majority. In fact, Statistics Canada, the government collection agency, reports that if you look at survey data, equal proportions of men and women self-report being victims of spousal violence. But no matter to the police, it seems. Let's look at a few more specifics from the website. Perhaps most outstandingly, the website defines sexual assault extraordinarily loosely and expansively. In fact, I think it's impossible to imagine a more elastic definition. An astonishing video by Jill Witkin, a Crown attorney who has apparently prosecuted numerous sexual assault cases, states that, quote, any contact made with your body in a sexual context without your consent may be sexual assault, even if there is, quote, no direct skin-to-skin contact, end quote.
And there does not have to be direct skin-to-skin contact. It could also mean that someone who hugs or kisses you in a sexual way without your consent is a sexual assault.
If someone touches your clothed buttocks, you can go to the police about that. If someone hugs you in a sexual way, whatever that means, or brushes up against you in a sexual way, whatever that means, you can go to the police about that and expect to be treated as a survivor and your claim investigated. It is stated numerous times that the police investigate every reported assault. Even an attempt to touch you, an attempt can be sexual assault, according to Crown attorney Jill Witkin.
And there doesn't necessarily have to be physical contact. A sexual assault can include an attempt to touch you or a threat to touch you in a sexual context without your consent.
As I've said before when I just run out of things to say, the mind boggles how any man could defend himself against a charge of attempted touching in a sexual manner or sexual hugging. Well, it's anybody's guess. And indeed, the entire question of what constitutes evidence in cases of sexual assault investigation is raised at multiple points on the website with extraordinary casualness. The message is, it seems, that evidence is great if you have it, but don't let it stop you if you don't. In the section on reporting to the police, we are told that, quote, charges will be laid if there is enough evidence to support investigation, which is a strange statement, seeming to suggest that charges can be laid first before an investigation is conducted if the evidence warrants, but it isn't clear how an officer can determine whether there's enough evidence without having already investigated. Elsewhere on the site, however, it is made clear that evidence, while desirable, isn't actually necessary at all. Again, in the section reporting to the police, prospective accusers are assured that, quote, in Canada, there is no statute of limitations for sexual offenses, which means you can report to the police no matter how long ago it happened, end quote. In other words, all you need is your story. And the website goes on to spell out that, quote, evidence is not absolutely necessary in conducting an investigation. So there it is. Evidence is not absolutely necessary. As a sidebar, it turns out that even without evidence, an accuser can apply for money from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, which we are told, quote, provides financial compensation for victims who have been injured by violent crime in Ontario, which includes sexual assault. Compensation may be awarded even if no charges were laid or if there was no conviction in a criminal proceeding, end quote. It certainly seems that the Toronto Police Service is going out of its way to make the lodging of a sexual assault complaint sound as easy and attractive as possible. Nothing is said about the rights of the accused or about the necessity of vigilance on the part of investigating officers to determine the credibility of the accuser and the factual basis of the allegation. There's no message to accusers that a charge of sexual assault is a very serious charge, carrying a very serious penalty, and that frivolous accusations or accusations in which the passage of time has seriously interfered with memory are a waste of police resources and a violation of justice. What the website makes terrifyingly clear is that under the present dispensation, an innocent man can easily be arrested, charged, jailed, and investigated based solely on a complainant's uncorroborated testimony, perhaps about an incident that occurred years and years ago, and that our law enforcement officials not only allow it to happen, but even encourage it, and encourage misguided,